I'd like to invite my dear friend Kabir to come up. He'll be the moderator for this this panel, and really touch on the themes that we're looking into understanding for the overall holistic view of how this works. So Kabir is not only a secondary school teacher at Surrey Schools District, shaping the minds of our next generation, for the better, I might add. He's also the Chief Executive Officer of Jokbar Productions, and amazing video productions from a cultural perspective. He did one on the importance of prayer to people from the Muslim community and the struggles that they go through, or we go through, in finding places throughout the day. We have to pray 5 times a day, so it's throughout the day. It's sometimes hard to make that work in a modern society here in Canada, but the emotional connection that people have with their tradition was very powerfully shown. And he is a program coordinator at the Muslim Food Bank and Community Services for many years. Kabir, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we have the agenda here. You have all the speakers. You got it from here?
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic, bro. There you go.
I want to say this once, and I want you to maybe listen up. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That means peace and blessings be upon you. You did an amazing job. Sometimes I don't like to introduce myself. I do a lot in the community, but in the essence, I do take pride in being a high school teacher. It is probably the most profound work that I do in the community. As a substitute teacher, I have a very particular access to a lot of students at once. I don't have my own classroom of 30 where I could sit with them and really change them, but I do have a perspective and a view of the many students across Surrey. And when I say that this is a topic that is very serious and that needs your attention, I mean it wholeheartedly. Especially when it comes to culturally sensitive therapies. I will speak more of this down the line when I have my own talk. Our next speaker is also very much titans of their own field, I might say. We have Sister Mehreen, if I could have you come up to the panel, and also Brother Sunny Chopra. Sister Mehreen is a clinical counselor with Moving Forward in Family Services at the Elizabeth Fry Society of Greater Vancouver. You may take a seat. She specializes in EMDR therapy, works with cognitive behavioral therapy. A lot of you might be hearing about that and how it helps the community a lot. And it is integrated with various approaches such as mindfulness, DBT, solution-focused, and narrative therapy. She also assists clients with a range of issues, including relationship conflicts, emotion regulation, substance use, eating disorders, trauma, and abuse. Sunny Chopra is a life coach and HR professional with personal experience confronting mental health stigma. Despite societal expectations as a South Asian man, he sought therapy in his 20s, leading to a more authentic life and pride in his emotional awareness. As an outreach worker, Sunny aims to support individuals with addictions and mental health issues, offering culturally sensitive resources and judgment-free assistance. We are so honored to have you here with us. Sister Mehreen, if you could start off the conversation, and then we'll take it from there. Sunny,
Jazakallah, brother. Jazakallah for such a great introduction. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And today I'm really glad to be part of this very thoughtful and profound discussion around mental health and addiction. And what I'm here and what I'm going to talk about which is very profound and which is the much needed talk that we really need to be open to, and it's around mental health, what mental health is and how addiction is interconnected with mental health, and which has affected millions of people around the globe, and it still continues to grow. So I guess, but today I'm going to speak more about what basically mental health and what it means to have a good mental health, and how addiction affects the part of our self, and how we can look into the root causes of mental health and addiction, and how and what measures can be taken to its prevention. For mental health, what it means to me, it's my psychological, social, physical well-being, and this is something that really, this is the reason I perform my day-to-day tasks with ease and comfort. This is how it tells me how much healthy I am if I'm taking care of my good health, and if I'm able to cope well with my stressful situation, and I'm able to make good connection with people, and I'm able to make good choices, and I'm able to make strong relationships, take good care of myself, my nutrition, and that's all what it sounds a good mental health to me. But what happened with addiction, the people who are struggling here with addiction, is it's basically a coping mechanism. It's the way they respond to their stressful situation in a very unhealthy way. So before I get into this addiction, I like to talk more about how this grew my interest in this area. And it most likely based on my own apprehension, my own fear around being drug addicts and homeless, and which led me to avoid those areas and to avoid those situations that which I known to have their presence there, especially if you would go out and you see people in Vancouver downtown, Hastings East Side, and the people on Valley area, so those are my apprehensions around those people, and those avoidance stemmed from my perceived fear of that potential harm or intimidation from them. So for the most part, I couldn't understand why people they use drugs, and what basically got in their head that really make them have those choices which they regret, and some of them they have the very life-threatening consequences like overdoses, and then they end up having their life in a very disruptive way. So what happened is I couldn't understand what's going on with them until I started working in a residential program with the women, with addictive women struggling with their addiction, and they're in their recovery. So then I realized that how deeply rooted stigma is, how deeply rooted the social stigma that they're facing, a lot of rejection, a lot of pieces of being ostracized in our society, and they are the reason they are being cornered and in a one side, and which is this kind of keep them to be in that black hole and this rabbit hole. They like to go out of this, and they like to work like a normal human being, but they cannot, just because of this stigma that it's going on, and how people perceive them, and how they have their belief around drug addiction. And I would like to say one thing which is very important, and I think that addiction, how we see addiction is different, because there are so many other addictions here which are acceptable to us, which we really, we really have respect for those addictions. Like if you say, workaholism, if you say, let's say, this is also addiction, because it also runs on the same cycle. It just kind of operates on a same cycle of addiction. If you just look closely, the cycle of addiction, it all operates on craving and being compulsive, being in a compulsive act, and then consequences and loss of control. So all these stages comes in every single addictive behavior, whether you're using drug, other substances, and if you are indulging into other other addictive behavior. Like I can talk about my own addiction of chai, like drinking tea. And it's okay, I drink tea, and my kids sometimes they say, oh mom, you're addicted to tea and you shouldn't be drinking, it's not good for you. But it's something that we we are very into it, and we just think that, oh, this is something, it's respectable. Workaholism is respectable. Even though it's so overly dedicated, people, they don't take up their other responsibilities, and they don't get to sleep much, and then they don't get to spend time with their families because they're so much overwhelmed with their work. And also we have other addictions of like internet, phone. There are so many addictions, but still they're all respectable. And somehow our society, some of the addictions, our society feeding into it, like the shopping addiction. If you just say, we just get some promotions we receive through our email, like, we have this discount and we have this % off, if we would buy and get that. So that's how I just see this difference, this differentiation, and based on those separate, how we view this addiction and how our culture participating in it. So while my work during the residential program in recovery with addictive women, I found that addiction doesn't develop in isolation. Rather, it's a part of a complex piece of puzzle. And to heal each and every part, we really need to look deeply into its root causes, what contributing its prevalence, what it's contributing in its development. What I just like to share a story about one of my client that that she opened up, and she has a long history of addiction to heroin and cocaine. And then she opened up and had encouraged to talk about her early life history. And she shared that how she was such an unwanted child in her family, because in her family, their parents, they always wanted to have boy, and she was the only girl, even though they had other 2 sons. But she never received that love and affection that she really wanted while growing up in her early years. So what happened that at the age of 11, her parents asked her to leave and move to one of the friends' home down the street. And the reason was because her older brother met in an accident, and as a result, he got into some brain injury. So what happened that he became violent, and he became so physically aggressive towards her that he would smack her, he would just knock her down, and it was so bad. Like she would receive a lot of physical assault living with him. So what solution they found is, it's like to ask her to move. A 11-year-old girl, if someone asked a girl, how would that girl be thinking and feeling? Like if you would ask an 11-year girl and just abandon that girl and moved her to some other places. So that was a big piece to it. And she moved there, and where she got entangled in drugs, and how she met a few people, hooked up with the wrong crowd, and started selling and buying drugs. And that's how it just all began. So the root cause of like how those early childhood experiences, very adverse experiences, can put person at high risk to develop this addiction later in their life. And how those feelings of rejection and feeling of being abandoned by people, and this is at the core of the addiction. We get to hear a lot of story from folks like that who are coming from those areas, and the information and the stories they share. It was heartbreaking. It was really heartbreaking for us to see a child in disheveled appearance, and how it evokes a deep feeling of compassion within us to see a child in such a attire, in such a state of mind. But it's equally saddening to even know that that very child now transformed into a hardcore drug addict down the street with the same feeling, with the same experiences, yet it go unnoticed and overlooked by our society, and even receive a discrimination and a lot of judgment from our part. Here is another thing that I like to talk about, the power of being non-judgmental. And it's also stemmed from my own experience working with the addicted women in recovery, where I started running groups. And then there was a woman I encountered in the recovery, and she was quite guarded, quite impulsive, was not taking any kind of participation in the group, just would like to skip the group. And so it just like she had been doing all those things. And with the passage of time, gradually I started some transformation in her behavior, and then she started participating in the group, like surprisingly, and then she was taking interest. And then once we were during one of our discussions, we were talking about the non-judgmental thinking in the group, and then she opened up and then talked about her experience and how judgmental was she towards me, and she didn't like about me, that she didn't like me and she didn't want to be in the group. And then she opened up how it stemmed from her negative experience in another residential program with another counselor who she thought was quite judgmental towards her and was very critical to her and to the group, and that something made her feel so excluded and made her feel so not belonging in the group, and that's how she ended up discontinue from the group, because she had few slips there. So now, once she opened up, it just made me show that she was a bit of safe. She felt that safety and comfort in the group, so that helped her to be open up. And then once she opened up, she felt safe, and then she went on and she talked about how it's helping her, the group helping her, and to helping her to learn different skills that we are doing. And it helped her to making her sense be more alive, and she could hear her senses and her emotions after a long time. She hadn't even experienced those. And also, before I just wrap up, I'll say that you don't really have to be a professional to offer support with them. You have to be a human. Thank you for listening.